The night in the abandoned asylum.
I'll never forget that dreadful night in the abandoned asylum. The hairs on the back of my neck still stand on end just thinking about it. It was a foolish decision, one born out of rebellious curiosity and a craving for an adrenaline rush that nearly cost me my life. It started as a drunken dare from my buddy Steve after one too many beers at the local dive bar. "Hey man, you're always going on about how you ain't afraid of no ghosts. Why don't you prove it then?" He slurred, a crooked grin spreading across his booze-flushed face. The old Blackwood Asylum has been abandoned for decades. I dare you to spend the night there. Like an idiot, I took the bait. My liquid courage made me cocky, and I readily agreed, keen to impress Steve and the other drunken louts jeering me on. Little did I know, I would soon be praying for the oblivion of death over the terror that awaited me in that forsaken place. Later that night, I grabbed a flashlight and a cheap digital camera, determined to document my ghostly encounter and return in the morning as the undisputed king of the daredevils. I hopped the rusted fence without too much difficulty, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness and illuminating the decrepit facade of the old asylum ahead. As I approached the looming brutalist structure, a shiver ran down my spine, despite the warm summer's night air. The building's bunker-like aesthetic, all harsh angles and decaying concrete, felt distinctly uninviting. Still, I pressed onwards, my youthful hubris refusing to let me back down. I soon found a side door, completely torn off its rusted hinges, and made my way inside. The musty, stagnant air hit me like a sledgehammer, and I had to steel myself against the overpowering stench of mold, decay, and God knows what else. Graffiti-covered walls closed in on me as my flashlight beam struggled to cut through the gloom. In the distance, I could hear the faint pitter-patter of scurrying feet, no doubt rats or other vermin, inhabiting this festering ruin. Pressing onwards, down the dark and narrow hallway, I swept my light across crumbling door frames and piles of detritus. Rounding a corner, my heart leaped into my throat as my light danced across what appeared to be a shriveled human corpse, desiccated and little more than leathery skin, pulled taut over brittle bones. A yell caught in my gullet, and I instinctively swung the beam away, only to find it was simply a gruesomely realistic medical training dummy from the asylum's glory days. A nervous chuckle escaped my lips as the adrenaline rushed out of me. As I delved deeper, an all-pervading sense of dread and disquiet took hold. Every shadowed alcove, every looming doorway seemed to harbor some unseen threat lying in wait. At one point, my flashlight batteries started to fail, and the beam grew fainter and feeble. My body tensed as I hurriedly swapped in fresh batteries, sweating bullets at the thought of being plunged into total darkness within these accursed walls. Rounding yet another featureless corner, I stumbled into some kind of old viewing theater or auditorium, the rows of moldering seats staring silently and accusingly at the raised stage. Dust motes danced in the air, catching my faulty flashlight beam like ghostly apparitions. I shone the light onto that stage, and what I saw there will forever be seared into my brain. In the middle of the dusty wooden boards sat a human figure, unmoving and almost melting into the shadows. My mouth went dry as I slowly crept closer, the beam revealing it to be a shockingly lifelike dummy or mannequin. Almost unable to contain my nervous laughter at being startled yet again, I aimed the light square at its face. That's when it moved. Slowly, with agonizing deliberation, the figure's head turned to face me. A waterfall of nausea and primal terror washed over me as I gazed upon its twisted features. The bald, mottled cranium hosted a face devoid of any humanity, any warmth or soul. The skin was sickly green and corroded, the jaw unhinged and distended, as if locked in a permanent silent scream. But it was the eyes, those cold, soulless pits of deepest obsidian, that disturbed me most, staring back at me with what seemed like cruel malice and awareness. I don't mind admitting that I screamed, a high-pitched warbling shriek of pure fear as every self-preservation instinct in my body recoiled from this unholy effigy. The flashlight slipped from my sweaty palms and went clattering across the dusty stage, its beams spinning wildly. Choking on my own panic, I wheeled around and bolted, body numb and acting on pure animalistic instinct. My feet pounded down twisting and unknowable corridors, every shadow a threat, every sound a harbinger of doom in pursuit. I careered around corners, frantic and blind, flesh abraded raw where I collided, with rusted metal surfaces and protruding debris. At some point, I must have become well and truly lost within the labyrinthine bowels of that diabolical place. On and on I ran, my lungs searing as if filled with white-hot knives, the coppery tang of blood filling my mouth. At last, when I could run no more, I collapsed in a trembling, wheezing heap. My faculties slowly returned, and with them the crushing realization that I was now hopelessly lost within this infernal asylum. The bare concrete walls seemed to close in on me, the darkness all-consuming. Then I heard it. A faint sound, just on the edge of perception, like wet footsteps slowly getting nearer. I held my breath, ears straining and heart thundering in my skull. There it was again, that same metronomic tread gradually growing louder. It was heading straight for me. What happened next is difficult to recall or put into words. All I can say for certain is that I have never known such all-encompassing terror, such a complete shattering of the psyche as I experienced in those final moments within that damned place. Even reflecting on it now fills me with abject dread and nights of waking paralysis. Perhaps it's best not to delve too deep into the shadowed recesses of that night. I'll simply say that when the darkness itself seemed to take on a corporeal form and come wading towards me through the choking, stagnant gloom, soulless pits of utter void staring into mine, I have never in my entire life screamed as loud or as long. It was as if the very essence of insanity itself was reaching out to claim me. To this day, I have no idea how I found my way out of that accursed asylum. One moment I was cowering and gibbering, the very wall's reality itself seemed to peel back. Then in a blink, I was stumbling out through a lobby where the first rays of dawn light filtered in, singeing my eyes with their harsh brilliance. I tumbled down those cracked front steps, half crazed and wept with relief at being free of those hellish confines. Yet something deep within continues to haunt me still. I often wonder if that horror, that primal fear of the unknown darkness, wasn't simply a manifestation of my own guilty conscience and imagination given form. Or was there some greater evil, lurching in the shadows of that forgotten asylum, waiting to prey upon the unwary? Sometimes, in the dead of night, when the terrors lurking at the periphery of perception seem to loom largest, I'm gripped by the irrational notion that something followed me out of Blackwood Asylum that night. Call it a delusion, a waking nightmare if you will. I just know that I can never truly shake the feeling that I'm not entirely alone anymore. That whatever nameless dread I disturbed still lingers in the inky black recesses, silently keeping pace alongside me and waiting for the darkness to encroach once more.